Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar between RightScale and Logicworks, Compliance in the Cloud. Before we actually get started, we're going to kick this thing off with a couple of polls. The first one should be popping up on your screen now. So are you using a cloud today? This could be a public infrastructure service such as AWS, EC2, Logicworks, Google Compute, or a private cloud technology such as CloudStack or OpenStack. Okay, next one should be appearing on your screen shortly. Now we're going to start with the second polling question that we tried to start with earlier. Where is your IT infrastructure today? Give you a few seconds to answer that. And now let's pull up the results. So it looks like we're seeing a lot of people who are beginning their move to the cloud and still remaining a little bit on-premise. And can we get the last polling question up, please? Are you an existing RightScale user? Okay, very new crowd today, 82%. Okay, well, let's get this kicked off. So welcome, everyone. Apologies for a little bit of a late start and some technical difficulties, but we're here now and we're very excited to talk to you guys about compliance in the cloud. Next slide, please. Your panel today, myself, Hunter Williams, Manager of Business Development at RightScale, Paul Jacoby, Vice President of Client Services at Logicworks, Kyle Holtman, Senior Solutions Architect at Logicworks, and on Q&A we have our own Dave Manriquez, who is an Account Manager for RightScale. I'd also like to note, please use the questions area within the go to webinar panel to ask any questions today, and we're going to be addressing those at the end of the webinar, as well as live. Next slide, please. Thank you. Quick agenda for the day. What is and why cloud management? Who is RightScale? It would appear that most people are fairly new to RightScale, so we're excited to explain where we fit in the picture here. We're going to talk a lot about compliance in the context of web infrastructure. We're at a very big turning point for the market today. People are moving a lot of workloads to the cloud, and we're seeing a growing demand for compliant architectures as that changes. We're going to go through a number of use cases, some specific client examples of how people have addressed compliance issues in the cloud. And we're going to close with a discussion about how compliance is really more than just understanding security, but there are also some best practices and methods to achieve a compliant architecture in the cloud. Next slide, please. So why cloud management? First and foremost, it's a new technology. RightScale allows people to consume cloud more easily and in a way that is more familiar to them. It allows abstraction with customization, so the ability to deploy a variety of different types of workloads in a variety of different types of ways. We provide visibility and control, so the ability to see what's going on in your infrastructure, see who has access to it, and then be able to go back and audit against that information. You have your ability to choose your own cloud. So typically we see this as being, and we saw this in the polls at the beginning, not necessarily between different vendors, but also between different service offerings by different vendors. And Logicworks is going to address a lot of that in their section of the webinar here. So RightScale really pioneered cloud management. We are the leading cloud management platform worldwide, 45,000 plus users. We're the one-stop shop for managing the entire application stack, so everything from a load balancing tier to a database, Windows, Linux, across a variety of different software stacks. We are powering the largest production cloud deployments to date, so companies like Eli Lilly, Zynga, and so on. The RightScale Cloud Management Platform breaks down into a few key areas. At the heart of it is the RightScale Automation Engine. So we monitor and manage every server that is launched through RightScale across public or private infrastructure. We then bring back that information and take actions with it. So that could be something simple like auto-scaling an application when load goes up. It could also be taking more advanced measures in dealing with a failure scenario. So dealing with disaster recovery, dealing with offsite backups. RightScale can automate all of that. This is all powered by our configuration framework. We provision these servers using a variety of different provisioning tools. Chef and Puppet are two of them. Regular shell scripting is another. These configurations live in an area of our product called the multi-cloud marketplace. In there, you're going to find a number of ready-to-go out-of-the-box software stacks for things like open source PHP, MySQL, .NET and IaaS. You're also going to find a number of industry standard tools. So tools such as ZenPHP, AI Cache, Riverbed, Traffic Manager, and so on. We then overlay all of this with a set of governance controls. Now, given that this is a compliance webinar, we're going to touch on this fairly heavily. So RightScale integrates with a number of single sign-on tools, but it allows users of our product to control access and security across an entire enterprise. So where multiple business units may be addressing the product, this allows you to lock that down and audit against it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Apologies, it looks like we're having a few more technical difficulties here. Okay, back to it. So, like I was saying, at the core of RightScale is the automation engine. It starts with monitoring and alerting. We'd install an open source tool called CollectD on all of the instances that we boot up. That tool then streams back data. This can be something simple like CPU load or memory consumption. It also is, since it's an open source tool, able to extend up into the application. You also have the ability to create custom metrics. So we've seen use cases such as scaling based on the number of phone calls go through a voice over IP system, as well as just custom metrics that an application spits out. Auto scaling is probably the bread and butter example of automation. Early on, when the cloud was really starting to take hold, auto scaling is really what a lot of people were after. We found that is not necessarily the most common form of automation. Typically, we actually see a lot of operational automation, so dealing with database backups, being prepared to handle a failover and recovery scenario if there were, to say, a region of a cloud provider go down, script execution for day-to-day management, and then also dealing with just monthly development cycles, so code deploys and software patches. Next slide, please. So the way that RightScale handles configuration is using a tool that we call server templates. Server templates are automated containers that will build a blank cloud instance into a usable, functional server environment. So think, for example, a WordPress blog, very simple example here. RightScale can set up the operating system, download all of the different required software packages, install WordPress, and in about 10 minutes, you're able to click on their raw DNS link and go in and see your blog server. It produces predictable results, so this can be done across public and private infrastructure. We're just going to talk a little bit about how they do this, but from a RightScale perspective, if you build something and you want to do development and test in a public cloud environment and production in a private cloud, you have the ability to do so. And then the dynamic configuration of these servers, since these are being built from ground up every time, means that all of these servers have the most up-to-date and current information possible. They are multi-cloud. Like I was saying earlier, typically we see this not be as much cross-vendor as we do cross-service offering within a vendor. And they're modular, so you have the ability to create all-in-one servers as well as standalone environments. Next slide, please. So governance controls within RightScale. I mentioned earlier we integrate with a number of single sign-on tools, Active Directory, LDAP, so on. We do a form of role-based permissioning. So when you add a user to an account, they can be added with something as light as a read-only access. And there are a number of roles in between that, from being able to launch servers to being able to change and build new assets, all the way up to account administration, being able to run cost reporting tools and so on. We break this out into an account structure that is intended to map very familiarly to an enterprise. So being able to carve out business units and then teams within those business units. You have the ability to control access as well as do cost tracking and consumption analysis across those different groups. So for larger enterprises who need to manage multiple P&Ls, this allows you to allocate those costs accordingly. Next slide, please. And here I'm going to hand this off to Paul Jacoby over at Logicworks, and he's going to take you through their offering and how it works with RightScale.
Great. Thank you very much, Hunter. I'm Paul Jacoby. I'm the VP of Client Services, and so my responsibility is I have the team that manages our client base and ensures operational satisfaction. I've been in the managed hosting business for longer than I like to say, but it's been 15 plus years, and with Logicworks over the past 6 months. And I'm here with one of our top senior solutions architects, and I'll let him introduce himself as well.
My name is Kyle Holtman. I'm a senior solutions architect here for Logicworks, and my responsibilities are for leading all client infrastructure solutions related to design, scalability, and planning. And I've been with Logicworks for the past 4 years. I was part of our cloud implementation team, and I've been in the technology industry for 15 years with a focus on scale and security.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So a little bit about Logicworks. Logicworks is a cloud and managed hosting company. We're in New York City. We've been in business for nearly 20 years, and we've had significant success in the SaaS, healthcare, media and advertising, financial marketplaces. So you'd sort of expect all that, us being here in New York City. Some of our customers, high-profile customers, are NBC, Dow Jones, Orion Health, 1-800-Flowers, and of course we have many, many others. So our business is we design, we build, we manage, monitor, maintain critical web infrastructure for our clients. And our clients depend upon their site for revenue generation, for service delivery, for product delivery. So it's a core part of their business. So over the years, we've worked with a lot of independent, sometimes smaller, sometimes larger web startups on helping them win deals with very large organizations where they had to be compliant, and we acted as their infrastructure security experts and partners. So the model, just overall, it's part of managed hosting and cloud hosting, is that we provide the hardware, so servers, the switches, the firewalls, network, storage. We leverage the top-tier data centers, such as Equinix, one of our top ones, to deliver a highly reliable, flexible, and secure web infrastructure. So with the advent of virtualization and the commoditization of hardware, what was once managed hosting has now evolved into cloud computing. So, of course, cloud computing has many definitions. We use the tagline for our business is the cloud your way. So we operate our own public cloud, and we define that as a shared infrastructure that can be delivered as a self-managed service where you put a credit card in and you get compute resources, or managed service, so we can actually manage your public cloud for you as well. So the majority of our business and what we've grown up on and our primary focus is delivering private clouds where we build the dedicated infrastructure for typically a single client's environment. So we're starting to see, and it's really growing, the combination of these or hybrid cloud environments where clients own the base and rent the spikes. So it's a great solution for those clients that need a combination of a highly secure, high performance or private infrastructure and less secure but highly scalable public cloud solutions. So again, it's important. We put our layer of management over this where we monitor the environment, we resolve infrastructure, open the tickets. It's 24/7 response team supports it. So how we differentiate ourselves, and there are many competitors out there, is our high-touch approach that we work with our clients, both at the beginning of their life cycle and throughout the relationships. We have a very strong staff of engineers. The average tenure that they've had with Logicworks is 6 years, which is tremendous in this business. They've been in the business much longer, so we have a strong team of server storage, network security experts, and their job is to make sure that your cloud actually meets the business requirements and delivers on our promise. So another differentiator, and we're proud of that, and help driving this call, is our relationship with RightScale, which, when combined with our infrastructure, is able to deliver a dynamic cloud management system that lets you and your developers leverage multiple infrastructures while still ensuring that a consistent and compliant template is used as new virtual machines and applications are deployed. So again, it gives you much greater control in trying to manage what needs to be defined and compliant out into the cloud. So let's talk about compliance. So compliance can impact businesses very differently, and I'm assuming that we have a diverse audience here, so I'll do my best, and we'll do our best to cover the broad scope of how compliant infrastructure can help each of you achieve your goals and your requirements around this area. So why might you be on this call? So perhaps you're a company that's providing health-related or financial-related services, or you're a healthcare company or a financial company, and you're just told that you had to conform or have been expecting new and more onerous standards for compliance. So this can be PCI, it could be HIPAA, which is part of the High-Tech Act, it could be federal compliances that we're seeing a lot more of now, NIST 800-53 or FSMA. So there's, these are just sort of scratching the surface, but these are sort of the big ones. Maybe you're a SaaS provider, you're in the financial field, and one of more of your clients just came to you with a list of audit questions, and now you have to respond to those questions. We're working and seeing a lot of early stage companies that want to launch their service, but they have to fall under the HIPAA and High-Tech Act, or they have to do PCI, and they really can't launch without having that necessary documentation in place, or at least the rubber stamp that says they're compliant. So perhaps achieving compliance is more than just the checkbox that we talk about, and you're truly concerned with ensuring a high level of security and operational best practices. So a great example of what we've seen and what I've seen in the increased scrutiny and sort of the changing seriousness of compliance is something that happened with one of our clients just a couple of months ago. So this client delivers a SaaS application to very large financial institutions. And every year, this happened for many years, the largest of those clients do security audits. So last year, in 2011, the auditor came back with just 8 areas that they had some questions on or needed attention. Doesn't mean that they're out of compliance. It just means that, hey, they want to check into this stuff. In 2012, the same auditor came back with 87 questions. It went from 8 to 87 questions. There was no change in the security or their operational practices that they were doing or that we were doing. So why the increase? And really what we've seen, and I'm sure many of you have seen, is that there's been a lot more fines levied, and there's been a lot more cases where the compliant entity, and a compliant entity is typically the retail organization or the financial institution, the owner of the protected data, had a breach, and many of those breaches came through the service providers because they weren't using best practices. So a lot of fines were levied, reputations were damaged. At the time, most of this liability fell on the owner of the protected data, so the actual financial or healthcare institution. And the service provider really got away with very little accountability, very little liability. So the world is certainly changing, and we'll talk more about how that's changing as we go through this. So it's just one example. There may be a lot of other drivers for you to need to implement a compliant infrastructure. You're trying to grow your client base. You're going after a new market. You need to avoid, of course, the heavy fines, or maybe you just need to have sound security practices and protect your customers and your business's intellectual property. So the point is, whatever the situation, you're likely faced with extra work and potentially extra costs associated with responding to this dramatically increasing demand.
Paul, quick question, does the level of compliance vary between cloud providers and approaches?
It can vary between them and the approach, because a lot of it has to do with how we work with our customers. So some providers, a lot of general cloud providers, they take a little more hands-off approach. So they validate their infrastructure, and they said that their infrastructure is compliant, and it's often compliant because they don't do very much. Our business approach, and for our clients, is that we're providing a high layer of management, and we take a lot of responsibility for that and a lot of accountability. So there is really, with us, there tends to be a much stronger sharing of the responsibility to be compliant. And so, how those levels and how those approaches go can really vary quite a bit. Okay.
Great.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So I'm not going to go into line-by-line detail of the categories and requirements that have to be met to achieve PCI compliance and conform to HIPAA standards. If I did, we'd be on here for another hour because there's 100 lines of different items. But just at a high level, the number one is that you have to protect the compliant data. So cardholder data, personal health information on the HIPAA side. There's a lot of different categories there. You have to have a vulnerability management program in place, strong access controls. You need to monitor and test the networks. You need to document that you've monitored and tested the networks. You have to have detailed information security policies. You need to do background employees on your on your background checks on your employees. I mean, these are just a few, but the list is very, very extensive. And again, it includes security practices and processes and documentation. So how is a cloud compliant architecture built? So to do this and illustrate it, we'd like to use a real-life example how a major player in the healthcare business achieved this through LogicWorks, RightScale, and CloudStack. The company we'll be talking about is a large healthcare organization with extensive IT resources and infrastructure internally. So for years, they've been providing a large number of applications for their clients, as well as for their clients' customers. And again, almost all of these applications were developed in-house and run on their internal infrastructure. And again, I want to emphasize, even though we're talking about this case, that while it's a large entity, the focus related to PCI and HIPAA and a lot of the basic principles we're going to apply to you no matter what your application or the size of your organization. So back to the example. So about 2 years ago, the company started letting their developers use the public cloud service for non-compliant and less secure applications. Specifically, they were using Amazon, AWS. This let them offer their internal users the quick, affordable access to computing resources for application development and non-compliant, non-secure applications. So not everything, but just the stuff that they could test on that they didn't need to worry about for compliance or security. All the other applications, the stuff that the majority of stuff that needed to be compliant and had to be secure, were still done by their in-house system and their IT staff. Of course, what happened is that with these users seeing what they could get in a cloud world, they came back and challenged the in-house team to deliver the same level of service, the same level of convenience, the same speed to market, the same cost benefits that they were getting in the public cloud. So internal IT, under that pressure and on their own desires, set out to finding a solution which would satisfy all their stakeholders. So the business people, the application developers, and perhaps most challenging, the legal department. So legal has a lot of power in this organization, and they would not allow the project to get forward until they were satisfied that the company was protected from possibility of massive fines from HIPAA, loss of intellectual property, or really what was their biggest issue was the fear of damage to reputation and the long-term impact that would have on their revenue. So the first avenue they pursued was building their own private cloud within their own data center. But they quickly found that both the cost and the timing to bring this to market were far too high. So they approached LogicWorks, CloudStack, RightScale. They went out to other providers and did other solutions as well, but they selected us. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Kyle and spend a few minutes on how we designed the solution. So with that, Kyle, again, one of our very smart engineers, you're up.
Thanks, Paul. So from a high-level perspective, we built this client a private cloud. As we discussed previously, this is a dedicated infrastructure where LogicWorks provides the hardware, operating system, network, and data center utilities. If you have a private cloud at LogicWorks, it'll show up as an availability zone in your RightScale dashboard and be exclusively accessible by you. When building private clouds, we start with completely isolated networks. This means that the underlying infrastructure is completely dedicated to the client, including the switches, firewalls, and the servers that are supported on this infrastructure. We have an opportunity here, and we give our clients the choice of using either enterprise shared storage, which we've had our auditors certify as compliant, or to deploy a dedicated storage system into their network. On the server side, we can deploy either ESX or Xen hypervisors, depending on the client's preference or usage scenario. On top of the hypervisor layer, we utilize the Citrix CloudStack orchestration software. We've extended its functionality, and we've given our clients and partners access to the API, which makes it possible for seamless integration with services such as RightScale.
Kyle, this, if I could interject, this all looks very good. Could you give us an idea of how long it takes to build an environment on the same scale as the one you're talking about here?
Sure, Hunter. The design phase is probably the longest part of this. And that's where we work very closely with our clients to figure out exactly what's going to meet their needs. And through that, we listen to all of their business cases, we listen to all their technical requirements, and we come back with a design very similar to this. And once we've got that design, the actual implementation of it, because we've done this so many times, for us it's all about hardware procurement, and we've got great partnerships with our hardware vendors, and we can roll out an infrastructure of roughly this size or even larger within about 3 to 4 weeks.
Wow, thank you.
Yep. So having a private cloud means several things for our clients. It means that they have dedicated firewalls, intrusion detection, vulnerability scanning, multi-factor authentication, and log management all in their environment. In addition to these, we also leverage RightScale to manage the environment with our clients. This enables the client to have effortless spinning up and down of virtual machines, auditability, which they can use for compliance and regulation, and the ability to front-end multiple cloud providers so they're not locked into just a single provider such as Logicworks or AWS. Logicworks has also partnered with AlertLogic to provide our IDS and log management capabilities. These security solutions enable us to provide real-time threat assessment for our clients' networks.
Another quick question there. Do your solutions vary based on merchant level?
They do. So when we talk about merchant level, we're talking about PCI typically, and what we implement for something that needs to be compliant at the level 3 or level 4 set is vastly different than if they were a level 2 or a level 1 provider. In terms of the amount of security infrastructure that's complementing their network. So with the IDS devices in our clients' networks, they can monitor both the internal and external traffic, and they can see any potential malignant intentions with that traffic. Clients also have the ability to run active vulnerability scans from the IDS device. This helps mitigate any unforeseen attacks that could happen, zero-day exploits, things like that is what we're really looking here. And so they implement different port sweeps, active code checks, even SQL injections can be done through that active check. The log management solution that we utilize from AlertLogic also allows us to aggregate both system and application logs from our client's environment and wrap those into some real-time reporting. That's very useful for the compliance part in particular, with archiving them, so that they're there for HIPAA and PCI compliance. So our trusted partner for multi-factor authentication is Vasco. Vasco is a world leader in token and key-based technology, and they enable us and our customers to have randomly generated time-based keys, which is used in combination with their other credentials, such as usernames and passwords. And this meets the compliance standard for multi-factor authentication. In our implementation, Logicworks customers have what they know and what they have forms of authentication, and this is key in helping them secure their environment. This means if either half of their credentials are compromised, be it they've lost their username and password, or they've done the very naughty thing of writing it down somewhere, or they have that key stolen from them, either half is simply not enough to access their systems. We also combine our management capabilities with compliance and industry best practices, such as following ITIL and other forms of policy and technical guidelines. Some of the quick examples of these are network segregation, the use of multiple DMZs and role-based access controls, management checks and balances, ensuring that no changes occur without management of both the client and Logicworks approval, routine assessment of networks, firewalls, and infrastructure configurations, and how that impacts potential violations. And we also implement strict user verifications at all levels for all changes. In addition to all of that, our partnership with RightScale really plays a key role in helping to achieve both convenience and compliance. RightScale makes it very easy to deploy standardized virtual machines by creating templates, which can be labeled as either compliant or non-compliant. If a user wants to spin up a non-compliant template, they can then use AWS, their Logicworks private cloud, or any other cloud provider out there. This makes scalability extremely convenient for the client. It also provides the ability to track and thus report and audit who creates which templates, and ensures that templates designed for compliant or high security applications are not deployed into insecure environments. This also provides an auditor with an interface and the ability to have an audit trail for compliance. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Paul.
Great, thank you, Kyle. So the bottom line of what Kyle just described is that we're able to deliver a solution that satisfies all the key stakeholders. Business users get to build and deploy applications quickly, easily, and cost-effectively. Technical teams are not constantly responding to rush jobs. Security teams don't have to expend a lot of extra resources doing internal audits and creating excessive documentation. And perhaps most importantly, legal is satisfied that they sufficiently mitigated corporate risk. So as we have mentioned throughout the discussion, compliance and security are much more than the implementation of security tools. So it's not just about the technology, it's not just about log management, intrusion detection, and multi-factor authentication. Just as importantly are the processes we must implement and the documentation we must create to ensure that we pass both our regularly scheduled audits that we go through, as well as ad hoc inspections that we have to participate in to help meet specific client applications, and that can happen all the time. So a few examples of the processes and policies, and we've hit on a few of these before, but simple things like how we handle and record ad moves and changes, how often we do infrastructure monitoring and review, scanning for rogue devices, the appropriate firewall rules, and any other obvious points of intrusion into the system that we need to do to better protect the critical data. How we store and, when necessary, destroy media, continuity plans. Something that's really been pushed lately is background checks on the people that we hire and existing employees that we need to go through. And I think that as many of us know, that many of these breaches can come from internal employees, so that we as a service provider and you as a service provider, and certainly the healthcare or financial entities themselves, we have to pay a lot closer attention to who we're hiring and the standards we hold them to and the training for them. So that's a big area that's really growing in terms of the whole compliance. Making sure that you've identified specific people on the management team that are focused on security and focused on compliance and have appropriate titles to do that. So these, again, are just a few of them. We're just hitting at a high level of the best practices that you need to do for PCI, for HIPAA, for the HITECH Act, and for many other compliances.
Paul, how much more do people have to pay for a compliant architecture versus, say, a more standard one?
Well, generally speaking, it does not necessarily have a big impact on overall cost when you look at the base infrastructures, because a lot of those processes, a lot of things that we're doing are just core to what we do. Sometimes there's extra costs associated with the alert logics. You might get a beefier firewall. Kyle had mentioned some of the other services are on top of that. But typically, as a percentage of the infrastructure, it's really not that much. So it's not a big impact. Not necessarily a big impact to it. So again, while LogicWorks and our partners can deliver that secure and compliant infrastructure, as we talked about, true compliance and real security is a result of all parties following best practices and guidelines. So we're regularly assisting our clients and providing the information that they need to help them meet their compliance, because they have their own compliance audits in support of PCI, HIPAA, SAE-16, which is formerly SAS-70. If you're already an owner out there of this PCI and HIPAA data, that you've probably already been subjected to the questionnaires and to the audits that are included in this. If you're a service provider, you may or may not have been exposed to this. If you haven't yet, then you can expect that it's going to be coming. So the bottom line is that all parties that work with protected data will be treated as part of the ecosystem for compliance, and our illustrious government is going to make sure that we all participate in it. So one of the results of the shared responsibility that we've talked about is the creation of a Business Associates Agreement, or BAA. And this document was put in place as a contractual way to clearly define the roles and responsibilities around compliance. So it's typically assigned between the owner of the data, so the financial institution or the healthcare institution, and their service providers. So if you're in the SaaS field, you're probably already familiar with this and maybe signed some of these. At LogicWorks, we've executed many of these agreements with our clients, and we're happy to do so because again, we look at ourselves as being a key component to the responsibility of delivering the compliant solution. So again, compliance is a team effort. Logicworks, RightScale, our other partners are there to assist in helping you to achieve whatever standards that you must meet. And I want to thank you all for listening and for participating, and I'll hand it back to Hunter.
Thanks, Paul. So again, let me echo Paul's thanks for joining us. We're going to finish up here with about 10 minutes of Q&A, so please submit additional questions if you have one. I'll get it kicked off. This one came in fairly early in the webinar. How does the use of a platform as a service platform like Windows Azure Platform as a Service impact PCI compliance? It's not all about infrastructure as a service. We at RightScale agree with that. PaaS ultimately is a little bit out of a customer's control. You're really giving an application to a provider and expecting them to run, scale, and manage it for you. It turns out that that's not the best way to address compliance. So what we've seen is that a number of these PaaS providers, Google as well as Azure, have both recently released infrastructure as a service offerings as well to supplement some of these missing gaps. Compliance is one. There's a variety of other gaps as well. Dealing with a provider like Logicworks is also a great way to mitigate that, where you would be able to run perhaps maybe a front-end website in a platform as a service and handle all of the payment processing and the credit card processing out of a higher compliance level provider like Logicworks. Here's a good one for Paul. Does Logicworks engage businesses to address the liabilities of security issues in cloud environments?
Yeah, that's in essence exactly what we do. So just in general, as our approach to business is we like to get involved early on in designing the architecture and performance, just as a general practice. I mean, that is, our strength is in our engineering, and so incorporating compliance into that and looking at both our responsibilities and our clients' responsibilities and coming up with that plan that's going to meet the compliance is exactly what we do. So we're more than happy to participate in that. In fact, we feel it's one of the key aspects in being able to make the right environment for our customers, both in the immediate term for compliance as well as long term.
Thanks, Paul. Here's a good one for Kyle. Can HIPAA or EPHI patient health information data be stored in the cloud?
It really can, and we do this already. And it's all about assuming risk and how much risk that the client wants to assume. So if they use a cloud like AWS, which is really kind of a lights-out infrastructure as a service platform, then they can absolutely do that if they assume all the risk and they go through all the processes on their side and they have the proper justifications. When they engage somebody that's a little bit more high touch like us, that's really, we're assuming some of the risk for the client. And this goes back to that business associates agreement, which we are willing to participate in with the client, and we really form more of a partnership. So the answer is yes, but it's all about how much risk the client wants to have.
Very true. Kyle, one more for you. Can PCI auditors visit an organization's private cloud for compliance inspections?
With Logicworks, absolutely. And this goes, again, back to that partnership that we form with our clients. We work with their auditors. We work with their end clients who may be driving the need for the audit. And we will show them, we'll take them on a tour of the facilities. We'll give them a deep rundown of what is happening. We'll open up the audit logs to them. We really work with them on all levels to ensure that they can maintain their compliance and that they can leverage what we do for compliance as well in part of that.
Great. Thank you very much, Kyle. Here's another one that just came in for myself. How does RightScale pricing work for pure private cloud? So as a good rule of thumb, regardless of whether it's public or private, RightScale's pricing breaks down into 3 categories. First is onboarding, second is subscription, and third is consumption. Onboarding and subscription levels are listed on our website and vary based on number of users, number of accounts, and functionality that you'd like to see in the product. Consumption, on the other hand, is handled differently for both public and private. Public is billed in a metered form, similar to a regular public cloud provider, per server per hour. And in private cloud, it's billed fairly similar to a monthly or annual license. So it's per physical server per year. There's also a small fee associated with each endpoint that you'd like to associate with your RightScale account. So I don't believe that we have any more questions. Give me one moment to check. It looks like we have one that just came in for Kyle. What are the considerations and best practices to remain compliant with Microsoft licensing agreements when, say, for example, SQL is part of the product offering on a private cloud customer? As part of the product offering on a private cloud, customers will be accessing.
Sure. So, Logicworks also has a partnership with Microsoft, among many other vendors. And so in our cloud offerings, we do offer different licensed products, and there's fees associated with all of those in the templates that the product is deployed on. And so in our public and private cloud offerings, those can be metered fees based on number of hours that those are running. We also make sure that when we take a look at the design, databases and high security applications are segregated out, put into their own environments and DMZs, so we can ensure physical security and network security as well.
Thank you very much, Kyle. So it would appear that we don't have any more questions. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much again. Apologies for the technical difficulties at the beginning, and thanks for bearing with us through that. It would be great if you guys can join us again on the next webinar. Thank you very much.